The fjord air was always cold, but this was different. This was a cold that didn't just bite at your skin, but seeped into your bones. A chilling premonition that whispered of unnatural things. My name is Bjorn, and I was once a proud warrior in the service of Jarl Einar. We were seasoned raiders. Our longships veered from the coasts of Francia to the misty shores of Alba. But our last voyage, it wasn't about gold or glory. It was about survival, and it broke us in ways no shield wall ever could. Our target was a remote monastery on an island shrouded in perpetual fog, a place the locals called Scarenzi, the Isle of Whispers. Legends said it was built on cursed land, a place where the old gods and the new god of the Christians clashed in eternal silence. We laughed at these tales. We were Vikings. We feared nothing. Jarl Einar, a bear of a man with a beard as red as a blood-soaked sunset, saw only an easy prize. The monks were said to possess a relic of immense value, a chalice studded with gems the size of a man's thumb. We made landfall under the cover of a moonless, starless night. The fog was so thick it felt like we were breathing water. The usual sounds of the crunch of boots on gravel, the clink of mail, the hushed, excited whispers, were all swallowed by the oppressive silence. Even the waves seemed to crash against the shore with a muffled, reluctant sound. The monastery stood on a cliff, a dark, jagged silhouette against the grey sky. It looked less like a house of God and more like a tomb. There were no guards, no watchmen. The main gate was unbarred. A strange sense of unease began to creep into my heart, a feeling I'd never known in 100 battles. We pushed the heavy wooden doors open, and the scent that hit us was not of incense and old parchment, but of decay and something else, something coppery and sweet. It was the smell of old blood. The courtyard was deserted. Torches flickered in their sconces, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eye. We moved cautiously, axes and swords at the ready, expecting an ambush at every turn. But there was nothing. We found the first of them in the scriptorium. Monks, dozens of them, slumped over their desks, their faces frozen in expressions of sheer terror. Their eyes were wide, white, and staring at something we couldn't see. There were no wounds on their bodies, no signs of a struggle. It was as if their souls had been scared right out of them. Eric, a young warrior on his first raid, turned and emptied his stomach onto the stone floor. Even Ivar the Boneless, a man who'd seen more death than any of us, looked pale. Jarl Einar, however, was undeterred. Cowards, he spat. They died of fright. The relic must be in the chapel. Find it. His voice, usually a booming force of nature, was strained, a thin thread in the suffocating silence of the monastery. We moved towards the chapel, stepping over the still bodies. The air grew colder, and a low humming sound began to vibrate through the stone beneath our feet. It was a sound that resonated not in the ears, but in the chest, a deep, guttural thrum that felt ancient and malevolent. The chapel doors were carved with scenes I didn't recognize from any Christian lore. They depicted not saints and angels, but emaciated figures with impossibly long limbs, their faces twisted in agony, being dragged down into the earth by thorny vines. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold ran down my spine. With a collective heave, we pushed the doors open. The humming intensified, and the scene before us stole the breath from my lungs. The chapel was different. The stone walls seemed to weep a dark, viscous fluid. The altar, usually draped in white cloth, was bare stone, and upon it lay the chalice. It glowed with a faint, sickly green light, pulsing in time with the humming sound. But that wasn't the worst of it. All around the altar, the floor was covered in bodies. Not monks this time. Vikings. They wore armor and bore weapons from ages past. Their bearded faces locked in the same terrified expressions as the monks. They were long dead, their bodies desiccated, yet they looked as if they had fallen only moments ago. It was a warning, a graveyard of raiders who had come before us, all lured by the same greed. "It's a trap," I whispered, my voice barely audible. But Jarl Einar was mesmerized. His eyes were fixed on the chalice, a feverish glint of avarice in them. "The prize is ours," he roared, striding forward. "The gods favor the bold." As his hand closed around the chalice, the humming stopped. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. Then, a scream. It wasn't human. It was a sound that clawed at the inside of our skulls, a shriek of pure, distilled madness that echoed from the very stones of the monastery. The green light from the chalice exploded, bathing the chapel in its putrid glow, and the shadows began to move. They detached from the corners of the room, from beneath the pews, from the high, vaulted ceiling. They were not mere tricks of the light. They had form, substance. Tall, thin figures with limbs that bent at unnatural angles, their movements jerky and insect-like. They had no faces, just smooth, pale surfaces where eyes and a mouth should be. One of them unfolded itself from the darkness behind Jarl Einar. He turned, his face a mask of disbelief, just as it reached out with a long, spindly arm. Its touch didn't wound him. It simply passed through his mail and flesh as if they were smoke. Einar's eyes went wide, the red of his beard seeming to drain away. He opened his mouth to scream, but only a dry, rattling gasp came out. He collapsed, his body still, his face frozen in that same rictus of ultimate fear we had seen on the monks. Panic erupted. We were warriors, but how do you fight a shadow? Our axes and swords swung through them, meeting no resistance. They were intangible, untouchable, yet their touch was death. They swarmed us, silent and relentless. I saw Ivar the Boneless, the fiercest among us, simply stop fighting and fall to his knees, his mind broken by the sheer horror of it all. Another warrior, Olaf, ran screaming for the door, only to be enveloped by a swirling mass of darkness. His screams cut off abruptly. I ran. I abandoned my Jarl, my shield brothers, my honor. I ran, fueled by a primal terror that eclipsed all else. I didn't look back. I could feel their presence behind me, a cold breath on my neck, the sound of their silent pursuit echoing in my soul. I burst out of the chapel, out of the monastery, and into the foggy night. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and the salt spray of the ocean hit my face. I found Al-Mship. Only 3 others had made it back. their faces ashen, their eyes vacant. We didn't speak. We cut the ropes, pushed off from the cursed shore, and rode as if the demons of hell were chasing us. We rode until our hands were raw and bleeding, not stopping until the Isle of Whispers was just a dark smudge on the horizon. We never spoke of what happened on Scarenzi. We returned home, but we were not the same men who had left. The other survivors wasted away, haunted by nightmares, their gazes forever fixed on some unseen horror. One by one, they succumbed to madness or took their own lives. Now, only I remain. I am an old man, my warrior days long behind me. But every night, when I close my eyes, I am back in that chapel. I see the green light of the chalice. I hear the unholy scream, and I see the faceless shadows moving in the dark. They are patient. They have waited for centuries in that monastery, and I know that when my time comes, they will be waiting for me. For you see, some treasures are not meant to be found, and some horrors, once seen, can never be forgotten. They are a curse you carry with you until the very end.